we doing this morning? We're doing well. We're doing good. Everybody doing well today. They caught me off guard with that. Like, I'll sit in all the meetings, and we have, like, a program for the morning, and when Alex went up, I'm like, he's not supposed to go up right now. Well, what's taking place right now? And so I appreciate that. It is awesome to just be part of an amazing church, and me and Becky consider it a great honor just to be part of this church, and even a greater honor just to call myself the pastor of this church. And it's just so awesome to work with such amazing people. And we have really the best staff that I've ever worked with in my life, the best people on the face of the planet. We have the best volunteers and the best church that I've ever been a part of in my life. And so I do consider it an honor to be your pastor. I really do. And I humbly accept that because I don't feel like I should be the pastor most often there's any church for that matter. And so thank you for having me. I do want to get right into it today. We are in the second week of a teaching series called Miracles. And if you are a guest with us, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I really believe that God has something in store for you today. If you're at home watching this later this week through our app or online, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. We are going to dive right into our message this morning. And so if you have your Bibles, I want you to go ahead and get to John chapter 6. We're going to be in verses 1 through 13, John chapter 6, verses 1 through 13. I want to remind you, if you're in-house, you don't have a Bible, we give those away every single week. We would love for you to have a Bible. We'll put one in your hands. Just go to our Next Steps area out in the lobby. We'll give you a Bible today. If you're at home watching this, then all of our notes and scripture will be on the screens for you. So John chapter 6, beginning of verses 1 and 2. I said, sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him, listen to this, because they saw the signs that he had performed by healing the sick. And so Scripture tells us that a crowd of people are following Jesus because they had seen the miracles that he had provided. They had seen what he is capable of. They had seen these things that he had done that nobody else can explain, and people were following him based on what he could do for them. This person can offer me something. He has something that could fix my problem. So people were following Jesus based on what Jesus could do. Now, if you weren't with us last week, we kind of just introduced really a main idea for this series that I just want to kind of keep us grounded on. And so if you have your notes there, which is on the back of that program, pull that out. I want to revisit kind of a statement we're going to revisit all throughout this series. And it's this statement right here, is that our faith isn't based on what God does. Our faith is based on who God is. I want to remind us of that. Because we have this tendency to kind of have this, what have you done for me lately type of relationship with God, right? And so we put our relationship as hinged on what can God do for me? What can he do, right? And so often that's what brings us to a place like this. And let's be honest. What brings you to a place like Hope Church? What gets you to tune in to a place like Hope Church? There's this desire for hope, right? I'm in a hopeless situation. I need some hope in a marriage, in a difficulty, in a trial, with some sin and addiction and some brokenness. And there's this hope of what God could do for you, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's kind of phase one in our relationship with God. I'm pursuing God because I need something in my life. I need him to show up. I need him to do a work in my life. I need him to claim victory over the sin in my life. I'm in need of something. I think it's kind of a prerequisite in our relationship with God. I need to come to a point of need. I need something. And then I believe we kind of graduate. Hopefully we graduate, we grow. Like anything in life, we grow a little bit, we graduate a little bit, we move beyond just what can you do for me, and we move into this idea. It's not just about what God can do for me, but it's what God can do through me. And see, that's really a miracle in and of itself. The fact that God could take our brokenness, God could take our pain, God could take our past, God could take our stories, and however much we've mucked it up and messed it up over the years, right? The miracle that God could take that brokenness, God could restore it and do something through us. Man, that's a miracle, right? The fact that God could use someone like me, God could use someone like you, that God could do great things in and through us, that's a miracle. And I believe God desires to move us past, what can you do for me? And God, what is it? What's the miracle that you want to do through my life, right? See, the foundation of our faith we talked about last week is we're going to be people who have faith and obedience to God. We're going to be people who are going to trust God no matter what, right? That's part of that, trusting God no matter what. God, I'm going to trust you that even though this brokenness doesn't make sense to me, I'm going to trust you that even though this past hurt, this past failure doesn't make sense, God, I'm trusting. My faith and obedience is in the fact that I'm not walking through this for just no reason. That God, you want to do something through my life, Now let me give you a little bit of backstory. That John chapter 6 first begins by saying, sometime after this, Jesus kind of went to get away, and you say, well, after what? What's taking place? Let me give you a little bit of backstory so you can kind of understand what's happening right now in the story. Jesus has a cousin. His name is John the Baptist. Many of you may have heard of John the Baptist. And John the Baptist has been given a very specific mission. His mission is to go kind of set the trail, blaze the trail for the one that is to come. He sets the world on fire to prepare for Jesus, the Messiah, the rescuer, the Savior, for God's Son to come. And so John the Baptist is out, and he's out preaching in the wilderness. He's out telling people about the one that is going to come, the King of Kings, right? Now understand this. During this day, there was a real king on the throne. And he didn't like conversation about a King of Kings coming to be the King of the Jews, right? And so John the Baptist is incredibly bold with his faith. He's out presenting this message of truth, and the king despises this message. And so the king orders and has John the Baptist beheaded, murdered, killed. I mean, think about this. This is your cousin. Jesus' cousin. This is the man who baptized you, Jesus, in the river. I mean, they have an incredible relationship. And so Jesus is feeling the weight of losing someone that he cares about. He's losing a family member. Friend, you ever lost somebody that you care about? Jesus is feeling that. So he's like, I just need to get away. I just need a little retreat. I need to get away from all these people who need something from me. And I just need some time to myself, some time to regroup. See, I think this is one of the greatest things about God, is that we often think that God doesn't care about our problems, that he doesn't care about what we're going through, what we're experiencing. We feel like our problems sometimes are too small for God. I think one of the greatest reasons why God wrapped himself in flesh and came to earth through Jesus is so that Jesus, as a human being, could experience everything that you and I have experienced, and he could walk through it with us so that he could translate, he could relate to what we're going through. So if you've lived in this life and you've lived long enough, then you know you've experienced some brokenness, some hurt, some pain. You've had some people abandon you, gossip about you, walk away from you. You've experienced trials and difficulties, loss and death. You know what? Jesus experienced every single one of those things. And you know why? So he can relate to what you're going through. That's why he cares about what you're going through. He cares about your problems. He not only cares, he understands because he's walked through them as well. John chapter 6, verses 3 through 6, it says, Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. The Jewish Passover was near, and when Jesus looked up, he saw a great crowd of people coming towards him. He said to Philip, Where shall we buy bread for all these people to eat? He asked this only to test them. Listen to this. For he already had in mind what he was going to do. For he already had in mind what he was going to do. A great crowd of people are coming up the mountainside. They've gone to kind of get away. People are coming. They know where Jesus is. Jesus asks Philip a question. He kind of sets him up. Philip, how are we going to feed these people? And it says before he ever asked the question, he already had in mind what he was about to do. Let me tell you something. Before you ever faced your trial, before you ever face your difficulty, before you ever face your loss or your death or your circumstances or your job loss or your affair or your divorce or whatever it might have been in your life, understand this. God already had a plan for what he was going to do in your life, right? God already knew. God already had a plan. He already knew what he was going to do in your life in that situation. You can sort of see, right? Jesus just setting Philip up, just testing him. Philip, do you believe that I'm bigger than this? Do you believe that I'm capable of something else? Look what happens in verse 7. It says, Philip answered him, It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite, right? So I want you to think about this. How many of us, we would call ourselves like analytical or like literal people? Like someone would tell you something and you instantly start doing equations in your head. You start trying to figure out the problems. I mean, come on, how many of us are kind of analytical people, right? That's Philip, right? And so all of a sudden they see these people coming. Hey, Philip, how are we going to buy bread? Philip gets out his calculator. He's like, let me do some. Here are the ones. He's just looking around. And so all of a sudden, what does Philip do? He does what so many of us do. He sees through this lens of scarcity. Jesus, we don't have enough. We don't have enough food here. We don't got enough. There's not enough money. That's half a year's wages. There's roughly 5,000 men, not including their wives and their crumb-snatching kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'd be lucky with half a year's wages to buy enough food to give everybody just a little morsel, just a little crumb. You see this kind of lens, this kind of scarcity. We don't have enough. We don't have enough. We don't have enough of what we need. There isn't enough here to provide for these people. What are we going to do? What are we going to do, Jesus? We don't have enough. You know what I've discovered in my life? It's oftentimes when we face an impossible situation, a difficulty, what we'll try to do is we'll try to reason our way into a miracle, right? You ever done that before? We'll try to reason. It just doesn't make sense. I don't know. I've been doing my calculations, God. This doesn't make sense. And what I've discovered about God is you can't reason your way into a miracle. You know what miracles are? They are revelations of God. It's when God exposes himself to you. It's when it doesn't make sense. We talked about last week that faith doesn't make sense. Faith is what makes miracles, right? It doesn't make sense. God, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust you no matter what. I can't reason my way into understanding this because, God, this is a revelation that you want to show up and do something in an impossible situation. In verse 8, it says this. Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. He said, here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. Right? My buddy Tony McCollum would say, here's a boy who packed his Lunchable to this meeting, right? He's got a Lunchable with him, right? He's got a few pieces of bread, got a few fish. But I want you to notice Andrew's question. He says, but how far will they go among so many? It sounds like this is a question of doubt and fear, right? But Andrew looks around, he assesses the moment. He's like, well, we got this boy with a Lunchable, right? And we got Jesus. Hey, Jesus, how far can you take this and how far can you make it go, right? I mean, think about this. I'm thinking not very far, right? A few crackers, a little bit of some cheese, and little pieces of slices of turkey, right? It ain't going to go very far, right? I mean, what are you going to do with this? But he says, just how far can you stretch this? How far can you take this? What can you do with this? And Jesus said this, have the people sit down. There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, listen to this, and he gave thanks. He took the loaves, he took what they had, the little that they had, and he gave thanks. There's not enough. Everybody else is looking on. There's not enough here. We don't have enough. And yet Jesus takes what he has, and he gives thanks for it. Let me ask you something. Is it possible for you and I to be thankful when what we have doesn't appear to be enough? Is it possible for you and I to give thanks when what we think we need isn't quite enough, right? If I'm looking around like, Jesus, what are you thanking your Father for? I mean, you got a few pieces of bread and a few fish. We have thousands of people that need to eat. There's just not enough here. This just doesn't make sense, Jesus. Why are you giving thanks in this situation? Everybody else, the onlookers, are looking into this saying there's just not enough, not enough. And yet Jesus doesn't focus on what he doesn't have. He focuses on what he does have. And he gives thanks and gratitude to his Father for exactly what he has been given. I wonder how many of us, our outlooks would change today. How many of us right now, if you and I learn how to stop being ungrateful for what we don't have and learn how to become grateful for what we do have. How many of you right now, your whole outlook on life would change if we could get out of the life of just seeing that we don't have enough, right? We could move beyond that and we could become thankful for what we do have. I wonder how many of us are unrest right now, our angst, that built up anxiety we have is this longing and desire to get more of something that we just don't have enough of. And what if we learned how to become grateful for what we do have? Verse 11 says, then Jesus took the loaves, he gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. This is like the golden corral of bread and fish. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what it says. You ate as much as you wanted, right? He did the same with the fish. When they had all had, I want y'all to say this with me, they all had enough. They all had enough to eat. He said to the disciples, gather the pieces that are left over. So just a minute ago, we don't have enough. Now we're talking about leftovers, right? Now we're going to pack meals to send home with people, right? Let nothing be wasted. So they gathered them and they filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten, right? 12 baskets. 12 disciples. 12 baskets. 12 disciples. You think Jesus is trying to teach a very valuable lesson to his followers? You think he's trying to teach something in this moment, right? I've often asked this question, where did the baskets come from? You ever asked that question? I mean, where did the baskets come from? I don't know. Is it possible? Is it possible that Jesus put 12 baskets in the boat before he ever set off from shore because he knew what he was about to do? Is it I don't know. Maybe. Maybe it is. We don't know where they came from. But is it true that Jesus is trying to teach something that what you see is not being enough? Let me get a hold of it. Let me get a hold of it and just see what I'm capable of. Let me just see what I can do. See, I'll be honest with you. I battled all week long with sharing this message or not. I'll be honest with you. You know why? Because I went to church growing up as a church kid. Many of you did as well. You know about this miracle in the Bible? Is you learned about this if you went to church for like 5 minutes as a kid, right? You went to vacation Bible school, you went to Sunday school, you learned about Jesus feeding the 5,000. It's the most recorded miracle in the Bible outside of the resurrection, because it's the only other miracle outside of Jesus' resurrection that's recorded in all 4 of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's a very famous reference. People often say, oh, feeding the 5,000, Jesus feeding the 5,000. So I thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to come and teach a message that everybody already knows about, right? What new take, what new spin am I going to come and preach a message that everybody is already familiar with? And so I walked in on Tuesday, Monday's my study day, and the staff said, what are you preaching on Sunday? And I said, I have no idea. And said, what'd you do all day yesterday? And I said, I battled all day long with preaching this message or not. So I thought, well, you know what? Hey, in this chapter, Jesus feeds the 5,000. In the next chapter, Jesus feeds the 4,000. We never talk about that. You know why I never talk about that? Because 5,000 is greater than 4,000, right? And we all love the big firework faith, the big firework miracles, right? And I thought, well, you know what I'll do? I'll talk about that, because we miss out on the smaller miracles that Jesus does in our life because we're so caught up on the big miracles, right? And so I thought, well, we'll preach on that. And then I started going with that and then came back to this message today. Something that God showed me that maybe he'll show you is that anytime that I hear something I'm familiar with, if I'm open and receptive, God will always give new revelations and new truths to any time his word's open. I mean, I grew up as a church kid. I've heard every message that you could ever preach, right? And it's amazing how I can hear someone preach on the same passage I grew up learning, and God can reveal something brand new to me. So I would always encourage us and caution us to ever become people who sit back and become people who have heard it all before, right? Because I can fall victim to that, right? Heard it all before, because I believe God has something new that he wants to show you today. And so here's what I'll tell you. I think the reason why this message is so important for us today, I think the reason why is because I think so many of us battle this life with dealing with the same kind of mentality that Philip is battling with in this story here. It's this not enough mentality. It's this not enough mentality. How many of us today, right? How many of us today, the thing that we think that we need the most, right, is in reaction to that thing that we don't have enough of in our life, right? And so what do we say often? I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough patience for a spouse or for a child or for one of these loved ones that are coming to my house at Christmas or Thanksgiving, right? I don't have enough of something, so we kind of live this life with, I just don't have enough of what I need, right? I heard Pastor Stephen Furtick say one day that the mantra of our day is this never enough mentality, right? Never enough, right? Never enough time. There will never be enough money, right? You go to bed and you've never accomplished enough for the day, right? You wake up and you've never got enough sleep, right? You get going throughout the day and you never had enough coffee to get you going through the day, right? Let's just be honest. This is how we struggle in life. You can kind of write this down. Take some notes with us. Us equals never enough. This is who we are. We're never enough people. I'll never have enough to truly be happy. I'll never have enough to truly be content. I'll never be successful enough. I'll never have a big enough car. I'll never have a new enough house, right? I'll never have the thing that I need. It will never be enough. It'll never be enough. Never be enough. Now, I'll tell you what will be enough. If I can hit the $1.6 billion jackpot, then I would have enough, right? Come on. Let's be honest, right? I mean, it's tied right now for the largest in our country's history, right? I mean, lines down the street, right? Because why? There are so many people with never enough mentality that have convinced themselves, hey, you know what? If I could just win 1.6 billion, then I would have enough. And I would be so happy. I would be so happy. I'd have so much I wouldn't even know what to do with. I'd be so happy. And we know that money can't buy us happiness. It can't. But it can buy me a boat. And a truck to pull it. A Yeti 110 ice down with some silver bullets, right? I'll tell you, that's a country song for every sermon I've ever preached in my whole life, right? But we're convinced, right? We are convinced that my never enough mentality, right? If I could just get a little bit more, if I could just have a little bit more, if I could just have a little bit more. And so what hit me as I was walking through this message is, you know what? This is a perfect collision of this mentality of never enough versus the one who is more than enough. It's a collision between us seeing through a lens that will never have enough, coming in contact, having an encounter with the one who is more than enough. See, us, we are never enough, but Jesus, he's more than enough. This is about us colliding with the one who is more than enough, an encounter, an experience with the one who is more than enough, that thing that you're searching for. that thing that you're longing for, that thing that you're anxious over, that thing that causes you fear and arguments in your marriage, that thing that you think will fix your problem, right? It is never enough. This is about a conversation about the one who is more than enough for you. See, when you and I have an encounter with the God of the universe, when you and I encounter God, the creator and sustainer of life, we have this encounter with God through his son Jesus, right? When we come to Jesus, this is the reality. When you and I come to Jesus, we are not enough. This is the reality. I want you to know this. You will never be good enough. You and I will never be holy enough. We will never be righteous enough. We will never be sinless enough to have a relationship with God. So when you and I come to Jesus, when we experience Jesus, we come to him as not enough, never enough. What we do is we experience through God's grace and his mercy the one who is more than enough. We experience Jesus who gave up his life for you and I, who shed his blood for you to cover you and I for every sin we've ever committed, to cover us in God's grace, to clothe us in his grace, so that you and I can be restored back to God in heaven. When we do that, we go from being not enough and never enough to more than enough, not in ourselves, not in our abilities, but because of the work of Jesus, we become more than enough through him. He says, you are more than conquerors through who? Through Christ Jesus, right? It's through him that you and I become more than enough. When Jesus came, his intention was that we would encounter him, and we would go from not enough to more than enough. That's the miracle. This is the miracle of the work of Jesus. Not enough to more than enough. But let me ask you something. Is that miracle enough for you? Now, if I could be honest with you, I've heard that Christmas story before at Vacation Bible School. I've heard that Easter message. What else you got in your bag of tricks, Jesus? Because yeah, I've had that, but I got some other stuff. I got some other needs. I got some other things I need you to fix, and that's really good, Jesus. Yeah, it's really good. You left heaven, came to earth, and solved my greatest problem. But I got this stuff, man. Like, I really need a bigger house. I really need to make some more money. I really need a newer car. I need some more relationships. I need my social media presence to grow. I need some more likes and some more comments. I need some more influence. I need some more acknowledgement. I need some more success. And Jesus is like, what you're searching for will never be enough. There will never be enough relationships. There will never be enough acknowledgments. There will never be enough success. There will never be enough money because you are trying to find it in something that will never be enough for you. It will never be enough for you. It will never be enough for you until you realize that I am more than enough. It will never be enough for your life. See, you're focused on all these temporary things, relationships, houses, cars, success, business, all these things. Jesus says, I didn't come for these temporary things. When I came for you, I was more than enough for your eternal things. Jesus didn't come for the temporary. He came for the eternal. He came to be enough in this life, but he came to be more than enough in this life for beyond this life. He came to solve our greatest problem at all, is that you and I are destined for a place called hell if we don't encounter Jesus, the one who is more than enough for you and for me. Jesus is more than enough. You say, well, Tad, I'm here today, I'm watching this message, and let me just say this. I don't have enough faith. I don't have enough faith today to believe that God can get me through this. He says, just give me the faith of a mustard seed, and I'll move a mountain in your life. I don't have enough. Hey, Jesus, we don't have enough wine for the party. He says, well, here's what I want you to do. Hey, why don't you just go find me some servants and those 6 water jars. Somebody fill them to the brim, and I'll give you more than enough wine that you'll ever be able to drink at any party. Jesus, we don't have enough food. Jesus, we don't have enough food. He says, hey, give me what you got. Give me the fish. Give me the loaves, and I'll give you so much that everybody will eat till they're full, and I'll send home 12 baskets of food for every single person. There is never not enough when Jesus is involved. There is never not enough when Jesus gets involved. You say, well, hold on, Tad. I don't have what it takes. I don't have enough faith. I don't have enough obedience. I don't have enough biblical knowledge. I don't have enough understanding of who God is. I don't pray enough. I don't serve enough. I don't give enough. You and I, is the reality today, is that we are never enough. But I want us to write this down, and we're going to say it together. Write this down. With Jesus, it's never not enough. We're going to say this together because I want us to get this today. We're going to say, with Jesus, it's never not enough. So on the count of 3, here we go. With Jesus, it's never not enough. Come on, church. Y'all do better than that. Let's go. With Jesus, it's never not enough. With Jesus, it's never not enough. With Jesus, it's never not enough. You say, I don't have enough. That's exactly right. Because we will never have enough. Jesus is more than enough. It's not about what you can do. It's about what he's done for you. It's not about what you're capable of. It's about what he is willing to do for you and for me. It's about the one who takes our impossible situations and makes them possible. With Jesus, it's never not enough. I discovered this, and I know many of you have as well. When we live with not enough mentality, then there will never be enough in this world that will ever make you truly happy. How many of us, we've convinced ourselves, oh, if I could just get the raise, we get the raise. What? A month goes by, we realize with the raise came more responsibility, more work, more stress. And now we're saying, man, I don't know if I really wanted this. I want a bigger house. I want a bigger house. And with a bigger house comes more yard work. Things break down. Things get more expensive. I got to have a new car. I'll just be happy with a new car. You get a new car, and you realize that the next 7, 8, 9 years of your life, you're paying for this thing that's not going away. And which was shiny, and now it's got scratches and dents, and now you have this payment that you can't afford, and you're wondering, why did I do this? See, we have this tendency to just to believe, and I believe the enemy and our culture just wants us caught up in this idea that if we could just get something else, if we could just have more. I want you to write this down. Nothing else will ever be enough until he becomes more than enough in your life. Nothing. There will be nothing in this life that will satisfy or gratify the longing of your soul. Until he becomes enough, there will never be enough conquest in your life. There will never be enough relationships in your life. There will never be enough money. There will never be enough of anything until he becomes more than enough. Until the God within you becomes enough, then nothing will ever be enough for you, period. Now, again, one of the reasons why I love this miracle in the scriptures is because all 4 gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as I said, record this miracle. And a lot of people sometimes will argue the New Testament gospels because you have 4 different guys who are kind of journaling and writing down their experience that they're having. And I want you to understand something. When Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were writing these experiences down, they didn't realize they were writing Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, right? And so they're going home and they're recording, they're journaling what they've taken place. And so sometimes you have different details that have been added to the stories, and people say, see, there's a contradiction. No, it'd be like this. If all of you came and experienced Hope Church today, and you went home and we asked you to journal about your experience, how many of you would all be part of the same experience, but you would take home different details, right? Somebody might talk about the parking lot. Somebody might talk about the lobby. Somebody might talk about a song that we did or a light or something that the pastor said. Who knows what it is, right? We would all have the same experience, but we would all catch little details that jump out at us. And so John records this and then turn around, and Matthew and Luke also record this, but they pick up a detail that John doesn't discuss. Matthew 14, verse 15 says, as evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place, and it's getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the village and buy themselves some food, right? This ain't our problem, Jesus. Send all these people away. You've helped them all day. Let them go figure out their food and their meal for themselves. Luke 9:12 says, late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him and said, send the crowd away so they can go to the surrounding villages and countryside and find food and lodging. Because again, we are here in this remote place. They got Jesus' back, right? This isn't anything wrong. It's like, Jesus, your cousin just died. You've been out here ministering to these people all day long. It's time for you to get a break. It's time for you to come out here to do what you came out here to do, have a little retreat. Send these people away, right? Now understand, the disciples were following Jesus because they wanted to know what he was capable of. They wanted to know what he could do. And here they're presented with an opportunity to find out what Jesus can do, and they're trying to send it away from him, right? Jesus, just get it out of your hair. This is an inconvenience. Just let it go, right? Let's let it go, right? Now, if Jesus would have sent away the crowds, we wouldn't be here today talking about Jesus feeding the 5,000, right? Jesus would have listened to these guys as an inconvenience that it was, then we wouldn't be talking about this miracle that took place. See, again, the disciples were eager. Jesus, what do you have for me? And here's this opportunity, right? This opportunity for Jesus to show them that he's capable of doing the impossible, and they're trying to rid themselves of it. Why is that? God's trying to prove something. He's trying to show us something in this moment. He's trying to show his followers, right? God is taking them on this journey through Jesus. He's showing them what he's capable of. And God's teaching them a very valuable lesson. Write this down. When God guides, he always provides. When God guides, he always provides. Now, I want us to be very cautious Because if you grew up in the South, you grew up going to church, we have a great tendency to attach God's name to any endeavor that we travel into, right? Oh, well, hey, man, I'm just praying because if I get approved for that loan, God just wants me to have that car, right? God just wants me to have that house. God told me he wanted me to go do that. No, you just have to have decent credit. And the culture we live in today, you don't even have to have good credit, right? But we'll attach God's name to it, right? We'll just put God's name in every situation. I want you to know, if you've been in our church for a really long time, you know this about us. I'm very cautious to ever walk out here and be the pastor who says, let me tell you what God told me this week. Let me tell you what God said to me this week. You better know that God told you something before you walk out on behalf of God and say, God told me these words, right? If you believe God's called you into something, you better know. But here's what I know about God. When God calls you to it, he'll guide you and he will provide exactly what you need to get through whatever you need to get through. He will not drop you off. He will not leave you off to dry. He's showing in this moment, this is who I am. This is what I am capable of. Could it be today? Could it be the exact thing that we showed up here today, asking God to take away from us, is the exact place where he wants to show up and provide a miracle in our life? Could it be that area that you keep saying, God, just rid me of this. God, I don't want to go through this. God, just get this away. Could it be the exact place that God wants to show up and show off and prove to you what he is? But many of us, we look at it and we say, this is an inconvenience. I don't want to walk through this. I don't want to feel this. I want to go through this. And what often we see as an inconvenience is an invitation for God to show up and do the impossible in your life. See, let's be honest. If we are people who constantly believe that we can find enough in something else, that we can find it in something else, we can find it in something, I'll find enough, then the one that is more than enough will never be enough until you realize that what you have isn't enough. Does that make sense? Until you realize that thing in life that you've been chasing after, that thing in life that you think is enough, until you come to the realization that it will never be enough, then more than enough will never be enough for you. See, it's at our point of need that God shows up and provides the miracles in our life. Listen, it's only when you realize that what you have isn't enough that more than enough can show up and provide a miracle that you're looking for. If we never had needs today, then Jesus couldn't show up and perform miracles. Again, baby, what you're walking through today is the exact thing that Jesus wants to show up and show you who he is and what he's capable of. See, I told you today is all about a collision. It's a collision of not enough with the one who is more than enough. Let's be honest, sometimes coming to the realization of what you have isn't enough, it's really painful, isn't it? It really is. It's really painful when you begin to discover that thing that you've put all of your hope and all of your faith in, that thing that you've built up isn't enough for you, right? It's painful. It's painful, isn't it, when you begin to discover this kind of path I've been on, this trajectory that I've been on over the last 20 years of my life. I've been pursuing something only to find out in the end that it's not enough, right? And sometimes it takes losing that thing that we've held up, that we've esteemed, that we thought would be more than enough for us to realize that we need something far greater in our lives. But we don't want that. Send that away from me. I don't want to go through that. Disciples, send it away, Jesus. Inconvenience. Send away the pain. Send away the heartache. Send away the obstacle. It's only in the obstacle. It's only in the pain. It's only in the loss. It's only in the trial. It's only in the circumstance when Jesus can show up and show you who he is. It's only when it strips you down. The realization, not enough first. The one who's more than enough. So this is all about a perspective. It's all about how you and I see things. It's all about how we see things and how Jesus sees things. See, in case you didn't know this, Jesus doesn't see things the way that we see things. He kind of has this heavenly perspective. He's got this true kingdom perspective. See, we have this, what we think kingdom perspective, but our kingdom perspective is the kingdom we're trying to build on this earth, right? So we spend all of our time, all of our energy, all of our effort trying to build this thing, and all this anxiety and fear and stress comes when our thing isn't going the way that we think that it should. And Jesus left heaven and came to earth to advance God's thing. Not his thing, not our thing, but God's thing. In fact, it tells us in John chapter 1, verse 1, it says that the word of God became flesh and he came to us and he dwelt among us. You know what that means? He left a heavenly place. He has a different focus, a different outlook, a different perspective on life, right? We know this to be true. We know this to be true about Jesus because it later goes on in John chapter 6, and Jesus is going to begin to make a series of 7 claims about himself. 7 claims that directly attach him to God in heaven, right? You say, what are you talking about? Jesus is going to begin to answer this question about how he can do these things and what he's capable of with 2 very simple words. When Jesus is asked, how can you do these signs and wonders? How are you able to do this stuff? He responds by simply saying this, I am. I am. You say, well, what does that mean to me? Would have meant everything to you if you would have grown up in this day. If you'd grown up in this day, at this time, at this moment, right? You would have been a Jew during this day. You would have grown up learning the Old Testament. The kind of the father of your faith would have been a man named Moses, right? Everybody knew about Mo. Everybody welcomed to Mo. Everybody knew Mo, right? Everybody knew Moses, right? Everybody wanted to be Moses. He was the father of miracles, the father of the faith. The lineage traced back to this man who had this faith to believe in God, right? Think about this. Who saw more miracles take place in the scripture than Moses? Nobody. I mean, maybe the disciples, but Moses, I mean, here's the guy who goes and talks to a burning bush. That doesn't happen every day. Here's a guy who goes before Pharaoh with a staff in his hand, and God turns into a serpent, right? Here's a guy who goes in front of Pharaoh and demands that he let God's people go, and he says, if you don't, God's going to send a series of plagues, and God sends some unbelievable, awful plagues on Egypt, right? Here's a guy who approaches the Red Sea, lifts his hands in the air and prays to God, and God parts an entire sea and crosses over 1 million people, right? Here's a guy, they have no food and no water. He cries out to God, and God rains down bread from heaven, right? And gives them water from a rock. Moses asked God, how are you going to do these things? How are you going to do these things? And you know what God's response was to Moses? He just simply said this. He said, I am. I am what? I am. I am. How, God? What are you going to do? I am. What I love about God is God never answers the what. He never answers the how. Write this down. God answers the how with the who. Don't worry about it. I am. I got this. How, God? I don't know how I'm going to get through this. God, right now I'm losing faith. I'm so stressed out. I'm so anxious. God, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? God, how are you going to fix this? What are you going to do? God, how are you going to do it? I am. I am. I am. What do you need right now? What are you looking for right now? I am. What are you searching for? What are you longing for? What is it that hole in your soul? What is it that you need right now? I am. Write this down. I am, and just put a blank beside it. I am blank. You know what that blank represents for us? It represents this area of our life where we're looking at saying, I just don't have enough. I'm lacking somewhere. I'm lacking something in my life. I'm missing something in my life. I am not enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm always going to be this. I am is an opportunity for God to show up and fill in the blank. I am not enough. Jesus says, I am more than enough. I'm exactly what you need. He goes on, fill in the blank however you want it. He says, I am your strength when you're weak. I am your healer. I am your comforter. I am your fortress. I am your strong tower. I am your confidence. I am your purpose. I am your hope. I am exactly what you need. Your need isn't in what you think it is today. Your need is in I am. I am is never not enough for you. And with this, so all the onlookers, disciples, everybody sitting around, they're asking this question, how can Jesus do this? How can this man take this bread and fish and multiply it and turn it into feeding over 5,000 people? How? And Jesus responds in John chapter 6, verse 35. It says, and Jesus declared, here it is, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry. Whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. He says, in me is enough. Do you need your needs met through someone else? Listen to this. Or am I enough for you? Is I am enough for your life, enough for your situation? He says, listen, we all hunger for stuff. Everybody in here, we have a lust and a hunger for more of everything else. Jesus says, I am enough for you. I am enough. Through me, it's more than enough. Whatever you need today, it is enough in me. You can almost hear Jesus saying, I'm trying to rescue you from the pain of discovering that nothing else will ever be enough. I'm trying to save you on the front end. I'm telling you right up front that I am enough for you. That appetite, that longing for something more. Once you taste me,